Hello and welcome to FireDEV, a fireside chat with great people in the industry. And today I have Jennifer Vazquez with me today. Do you want to do a brief introduction, Jennifer?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. As an introduction, my name is Jennifer Vasquez. I am a current student at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo, California, studying computer science. And in less than a month, I'll be graduating with my bachelor's. And starting in January, I'll be joining Respawn full time as a build and release engineer for Apex Legends.
Okay, so we got a lot to discuss there. How has your degree been so far? Let's start there.
It's been rocky. It was never going to be easy, especially since I'm a female. I would walk into classes and there would be like two other girls. So at the beginning, it was really hard, but I was really motivated, had a lot of determination, self discipline. And so, I'm here now, so it worked out.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, because I remember when I was at university, I did computer games programming, so again, a computer science type course, and every year there was probably, like I said, about two girls, one, two, that was it, and yeah, I feel like you either had the one that either coasted and just relied on getting help from, let's say, one of their male friends in the class, or then you got that one person, because we had these as well, where they would like concentrate so hard and get really good grades as well. So that you either had one or the other. Whereas with the guys, because there were so many, you have people at the low end, that were coasting. You have people at the high end that were rocking it, and you have people in between. Whereas with the girls, there was only like the odd one, so there wasn't really that much variety there. Did you, whilst doing that course, did you ever experience any sort of problems or any issues because you was a girl, or any sort of, you know, almost like advantages to being a girl?
I would say I didn't really like struggle academically, which was nice. It was more like a confidence thing. Like I just felt like I didn't belong. So just feeling like I wasn't supposed to be there. But seeing that I performed academically and excelled, it really like motivated me. There wasn't any issues that I can think of regarding like feeling like I don't know judged or anything. Like I definitely had eyes on me, but I think overall it was a comfortable atmosphere for me to excel in, and definitely like I did get some eyes, but I think it was more just they were like confused that a girl was there, but I did get a lot of support from my classmates and my teachers and professors.
Oh, that's good then. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty similar experience. When I was at uni, the girls didn't really get bothered. It was like you're saying, it was a bit strange because all the classic guys, and then you got like a couple of girls as well in the class. But yeah, it was a pretty similar experience. So okay, so yeah, let's move on to respawn. So you're a software engineer or intern at respawn. You was. What was it like working at Respawn as an intern, and what did you specifically do at Respawn?
Okay. So I was a member on the build and release team for Apex Mobile, and so what the build and release team does is just handle different versions of the game and then distribute that out to our teams. And so as an intern, first of all, Respawn was honestly like a dream come true to intern there. So I was just really excited to be there. And I was treated like I was a member of a team, not just like an intern, which was nice. So the team itself, the team dynamic was just awesome. And I was so happy that I was able to do my internship at Respawn. So I did a couple things. I was first tasked with increasing code coverage for the build and release pipeline. It's kind of crazy that code coverage isn't really seen um, or it's not like as focused as you may think in the industry. So our build and release pipeline was around 16% code coverage, which is pretty low. So I was tasked to increase that, and I reached around 86%, which is really nice. And so that will stay for the entirety of the build and release pipeline lifetime, which is really awesome to see. And then for my second half of my internship, I was given a task to make a notification system that uh, gives our team members a message about the status of the release. And so the problem that they had before was that they had to manually check if a build was complete. And since builds can take 10 minutes, hours to complete, it was just really inefficient for these team members to just constantly check. And because time is money and we want to get those builds out to the right people as quickly as possible, a notification system made sense. And so I made a Slack notification system that connected our like our build API and the pipeline API. And so I just it was a lot of just data extraction and getting the right build information and sending the notification at the right time when I know a build has either completed or if it failed to do so, and just having the right information in each message.
Okay, what sort of platforms and technologies did you use for the notification system? Was it like an email based notification system? Did it pop up on your phone, desktop? Was it a mixture?
So I use the Slack API. So we just had a message pop up like in a channel, and so it popped up on your phone, on your desktop as like a notification. Since the Slack API, you're able to ping users directly, and so I just had it pop up like as an actual notification, and it just showed the release information, and so it was really helpful for them since you could be doing whatever you want on your computer, but you could still see that notification pop up at the bottom corner, and so it really did serve as a notification system.
Yeah, I'm guessing it also helped when the dev team or anyone working on it wasn't even at their computer, because obviously you can have Slack on your phone. So instead of them having to run back thinking, is it done? Yeah, it's been 10, 15 minutes. I think it's done, but it turns out that it's not done. Possibly. They'll just get a notification on their phone. So that's definitely useful. How did you find the messaging API, and the Slack sort of APIs in general to interact with?
It wasn't that bad, honestly. The Slack itself, API was there's a lot of documentation for it, so I was able to research and just find the right tools. It was more so like the where the builds were located. That API really did have to just like um, learn that like step by step and just see what the request like returned. But Slack API itself, there's a lot of resources out there that I was able to use, and just like testing it in general was pretty easy to do, just like independently. So it wasn't too bad on that end.
Okay, that's good then. And like any particular resources that you would recommend that's online for people, let's say that are listening that might want to leverage the Slack API? Because considering you've done it in an actual big AAA studio, and it's in the wild, it's working. It's a bit different to tinkering away at home.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, the Slack channel or the Slack website itself has their own like page based on the API, and it gives you examples, which is really nice. Um, and so, I would just honestly look into that and work on it like locally and just like your local machine and just like test it out. Um, for me, I just learned by just like messing around and seeing what I could make, and so just using those resources that Slack provides on their documentation page was just enough for me to make the notification system.
Okay. And talking about what you was discussing before, code coverage. So, what did that part of your job and tasks involve? Because obviously we've talked about the Slack API stuff. Giving a notification to the developers. What did the code coverage? Because you mentioned they were 16%, then it was 84%, something along those lines. So, can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, so the code coverage itself again was really low on all ends of the build and release pipeline, and so firstly I just had to understand what each file contained and what it was supposed to do to make these test cases reliable and useful for the long run. So I just had to sit with those tests or with the files and just like go line by line and see what each line executed. And they had the build and release pipeline in Python. And so I looked into just like different Python libraries and came across the mocking library. And so what they told me that they wanted was that they wanted these test cases to be completely independent from any online service. And so that meant the requests getters, I couldn't necessarily use that online database or server since they didn't want me to access any files that were part of Respawn. And so I had to learn how to mock. And so, like that, like the name suggests, mocking just imitates return values and objects. And so I never learned that in school, which was crazy since it's so useful when it comes to code coverage. And so I had to learn mocking, and um, that took a little bit of time just because it was just so foreign to me. But once I got it down, I was able to increase that code coverage a lot. And so, probably, I would say like 90% of my test cases use the mocking library. And so, if anyone is thinking about increasing code coverage for their own projects but don't want to use like a valid API token or have any security issues, the mocking library is definitely the way to go. It gives you full control of your test cases and you know exactly what you're testing for. So it helps a lot with debugging. And it's also like you can change it very easily. And so in the long run, I think it's worth it to learn how to mock.
Okay, that's cool. And so with all of this, testing and code coverage stuff, what sort of language was that written in?
It was Python.
Is Python. Okay. Was that just because that's what was best for the testing, or is Python used a lot in Respawn anyway? Because C++, C, those are some of the big game development languages. So
Right.
what was the reasoning behind using Python at Respawn?
Um, I think for at least the Apex Mobile team, for the build and release team, all their files were in Python. And so that might have been just like a personal, I guess, a personal decision on their end. So that's why I just did the test cases in Python to just kind of match that language and just be consistent. I know in my new team, which is on the main team, they do use C sharp. And so um, I know that would be a little bit different when it comes to testing, but for the most part, I will say that C, and like C++, C sharp is the common language used in the gaming industry, which is why I was a little confused why I was working with Python. But build and release team don't necessarily work on like gameplay stuff, so having it be on Python wasn't like that big of an issue for them, and so I think it was a personal decision for the team to code in Python.
Okay, that's fair enough. And because you mentioned C sharp, are they using stuff like Unity, or what sort of game engine do they use? Is it like a internally built one?
I think it is an internally built one. Since I'm not like there yet, I can't like fully say. I know it's not Unity, but they have been talking about just like a personal one that they've built. So I'm thinking it is something that is more independent from what's out there.
Okay, yeah, because the guys that made Respawn was it Vince Zampella, and I'm trying to think of the other guys now. I've got it noted down. Yeah, Jason West, because they came from Infinity Ward, because they created that company, and there they had the IW game engine, the Infinity Ward game engine, and that was, if I recall correctly, and I've got it up here, was based off of IdTech, so from
Mhm.
uh, id, and so yeah, it's uh, they've had obviously their own engines in the past, those guys, and probably the team that they brought with them, and obviously it's been modified, but they've had their own engine. So yeah, it does make sense to have, especially when you're at that scale, to have your own engine.
Right.
So
Yeah.
why Respawn and not another company?
Honestly, I when I first started studying computer science, I was always asked the question, like, well, what do you want to do with your degree? What's the end goal? And I always said I wanted to be part of a AAA gaming company like EA. And so anything in EA related was just like the goal. And I think my dream or like my expectations were solidified when I did my internship because they treated me like a human and not just like a robot. And um, they just like treated me with like respect. And I just felt like that was the way I wanted to be treated. Um, and so for me, after the internship, I just knew Respawn was my home, and I was hoping that I was going to get a full time offer. And when I did, it was a dream come true. And I'm really happy to be at Respawn because I think morally I align with their values. And I see, I just only see myself at Respawn at this point. And Respawn's just such a great company and they really care about their workers. And so I knew I was in the right place right after my internship or during my internship.
Okay, that's good to hear then. And what was the interview process like? Response? Obviously, it's a AAA studio, so I think it'll be interesting to hear what it takes to get through
Right.
the interview process.
Yeah, so I applied in a very weird way. So I was part of a foundation called the Hispanic Scholar Foundation, and they are in partnership with EA. And so they reached out to the scholars and said, hey, Respawn has a position available as a software engineer. Um, and we're looking to basically represent someone to go through the interview process. And so, because it was that partnership, I skipped a couple steps in the interview process. And since it was like internal, I just went straight to meeting the team and interviewing them or getting interviewed by them. So the interview process itself was more behavioral and they just wanted to see who you were as a person and see if it aligned with the team dynamic. I think for them they just wanted to have someone that they liked to work with. It wasn't so much that they needed to be the best coder or anything like that. They just wanted someone that could fit into the team. And they did mention that they like having that balance of like they want someone who's passionate about gaming and they want someone who's good at coding. And a lot of people who do apply to Respawn or EA have either the passion for gaming but not really the skills for coding, or they have the skills for coding but not really the passion for gaming. So they said they saw that I had that balance and the passion for both things, and so they kept getting me through the next stage. And it was mostly just behavioral, like I mentioned. There was a couple coding related questions, but nothing like technical, nothing like a test that I had to take. Um, and yeah, I think I did around 3 to 4 interviews with the team, just trying to get to know them and them trying to get to know me and seeing if I was a good fit for the team.
Okay, so you said there's no sort of like technical part of the test. That they talked about some coding. Was that like here's what would you do, and here write some pseudocode, or was it even more macro than that? What sort of style of coding technical questions were there? Because you said he wasn't like hardcore.
Right. It was more like high level, just like we're having a conversation about coding. There was no pseudocode. I wasn't writing anything down. It was more like, here's a problem. Like, what would you do? Like, take us through your thinking process. And so nothing code related, or nothing like language wise. Like, I wasn't writing any code. Um, it was more just like the overarching ideas that they wanted to see.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I've heard that a lot on the podcast from people that have been at, especially the big studios, that they haven't been doing many hardcore technical questions. It's been, your thought process, how you would approach a problem, that sort of stuff, and then on top of, what type of person you are just personally.
Right.
Did they do any sort of like verification of your skills, that your capabilities? in coding outside of knowing that you've been to university or you are in university?
Nothing that I can think of right off the bat. I mean, I gave them my GitHub, so maybe they looked through that, but
Hmm.
I'm not sure. But there wasn't any like metric for them besides like what I gave them. There was no, like I said, test or anything like that. So I think, I mean, I don't really know what they did. So I'm not sure if they did look at my GitHub or they just took my word for it. But I mean, it worked out at the end, so I'm fine.
Oh yeah, I'm just thinking about from the perspective of, let's say, being a company hiring someone. Obviously, they're not hiring 100 people; they're hiring an intern, but still, you want to try and make sure that you're getting someone that can actually do a good amount of code. I mean, that can actually code properly instead of not being able to code at all. But
Right,
again, like I said, it seems to be very common that they do approach you very differently. I think they just kind of assume that if you're coming there and you can kind of talk to them on some technical level, that you probably have some decent coding skills, and after that, they just want to know how you approach a problem, I'm guessing. So,
right.
what is your favorite respawn game?
Um, it's Apex.
Apex.
It has to be Apex. I mean, I to be able to work on Apex is just like crazy to me because it was one of my favorite games and still is, and so being able to say that I'm a Apex Legend dev is something really crazy to me.
Okay, that's cool. And is the mobile version of Apex, has that released?
It has released. I think
It
it
has.
released in May, so it's been a few months.
Okay.
Um,
So
yeah,
just this year, yeah. Because I remember when Apex first came out, because obviously it's free to play. A couple of friends of mine that don't game that much anymore, so they don't really buy games. Apex came out. It's by Respawn, which made Titanfall, which was made by the guys that really made Infinity War and Call of Duty. So they jumped on it. I had a quick go on it as well at the time. It must have been when it came out in 2019 when I had a go, and I remember thinking it does feel very Call of Duty like, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. For me personally, it's either between Titanfall or Jedi Fallen Order. I thought they did a
oh,
really good job with Fallen Order, and Titanfall, especially number two. I've been playing that again recently on PS5 because I played it initially on PC. I'm playing again on PS5, on a bigger screen, and been enjoying that. Started Fallen Order again. I need to get through Medal of Honor Above and Beyond because they did the
uh-huh.
that VR Medal of Honor. Are they doing more VR stuff? Because obviously, compared to the rest of their titles, that's a bit out there.
Right. Currently, I don't think VR is on their radar.
Mm,
I mean, I will say they're working on a lot of things, so maybe I'm
of
not
course.
sure what they're actually working on, but I don't think it's a high priority right now. Of course, we've got a lot coming, so it's hard to
Yeah.
manage what we need to do.
Yeah. Do you have any close or link with, or did you with the Star Wars team? Because I know they got Fallen Order, they got Jedi Survivor, and they got two more untitled Star Wars games they've announced. So, like, was he in the same building, same studio, or was it totally separate?
So they are part of Respawn, so we do get to hear their journey while developing it, and we have show and tells, and so anyone at Respawn can show up and see what they have been doing, and so I have seen the progress they've made, and I guess like what the game is showing and the graphics and stuff, and I will say it's probably one of the best I've ever seen. It brings tears to my eyes because it's just so beautiful and they represent Star Wars so well, and so I will say that the next Star Wars games are going to be insane.
I mean, I hope so because Jedi Fallen Order was a good game. Felt like the performance could have been tweaked a little bit. I felt like the performance wasn't quite there, but hopefully they'll fix that with Jedi Survivor and the other upcoming Star Wars games. But overall, the gameplay and the storyline was on point for me. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for Survivor coming out next year. considering it is exclusive for next. Obviously, with PC as well, with excluding PC, it is exclusive for next gen systems. So I'm
Right.
hoping that really. I mean, you're already saying the graphics are looking really good. And I mean, that was going to be my next question. Do you get to play each other's game? But you're saying you have some, like demo days where you show each other. Do you have like a way of do they get feedback from, let's say, the Apex team, and the Apex team get feedback from the Star Wars team, for example, or Titanfall team?
Yeah, so there we have just like play test days where we just like get to see what each other have made, and so we do have constant feedback like coming between each team, and sometimes we ask the team members to like focus on like a specific like aspect that we want to like get feedback from, and so we really do value that interaction between all the teams, and we use that feedback from each other to apply changes to the game.
Okay, that's cool. And so Apex is on a bunch of platforms, including last gen platform. Xbox One, PlayStation 4. And so, is there any sort of reservations within Respawn for continuing to support older systems? Because that must hinder, progress when you're still supporting old systems. And how is that kind of managed? Is it like a totally separate team, or is it single pipeline and the engine just sort of exports the PS4 version with less graphics and less, special effects and objects, and then the PS5 version with all the bells and whistles?
I think it's definitely a pipeline thing, how builds are built. So as long as we keep the pipeline as up to date as possible, I think it is fine. Um, I mean, right now we have, like you said, so many different platforms that we're supporting Apex on. And so it really comes down to getting that pipeline just like um, tiered to that one platform. And so I think in the long run, it's going to be fine. And we have the resources to support those platforms. But I think it definitely is a pipeline thing, and as long as I know our team has expanded, and so I know the resources are there, and so as long as we keep our pipelines up to date and can handle that, I think we will still continue seeing Apex on those older platforms.
Okay. And what's your favorite platform to play Apex on?
PC for sure.
PC for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy because once you go to PC, you can never go back, and so I see people playing on like a different platform, and it just doesn't feel the same. And so, yeah, once you go PC, you can't really like go back.
Yeah, it is definitely very difficult. I mean, I initially started off my gaming when I was a young kid on PC mainly, and then I did console stuff not long after. To be fair, I was still a kid when I had a console, but I've been always switching back and forth. But I know what you mean. There's something like with PC, the precision, the movement, something like keyboard and mouse. People don't understand that are hardcore console gamers that have never really been on PC long enough, especially if they didn't
Right.
come from a PC background. I've got friends out, they'll be like, oh, no, keyboard and mouse, it's not as good as a controller. Controller is good just to get in there because not that many buttons. You generally know what those buttons do. X on PlayStation is jump, square is probably reload, triangle is
Right.
probably, change weapon or something. So you can get into it a lot easier. But once you get used to it, customize your controls, and obviously, the graphics aspect, the support for ultra wide monitors, and the really high frame rates as well. So, and especially with a game like Apex, which is very competitive. So
Right.
yeah, the PC for sure. So, what made you choose programming as a career over something else?
I mean, I first started out thinking I wanted to do some sort of math degree and go into teaching because I loved math. And this was back in high school. And so I was determined that I was just going to do math up until my last year of high school. I just thought that was my career. But my high school had a program. It's called the Engineering Academy. And so they take in a set of students and basically teach us how to design, how to code, how to use machinery. And in my last year, I was part of the programming team. And I mean, I started programming when I was a freshman in high school. And so I had the experience, but it just didn't really make sense to me. And I just hated it. And so I was just like, I would never code for a living. Like, why would anyone want to do this? But I got into my senior year on the programming team, and it just all clicked for me. And seeing how for loops, if statements worked, it just made sense. And I remember going to my teacher at the time saying, I actually am going to do math as my degree. And he advised me to rethink my decision, because I was excelling really, like, I was just excelling in the coding environment. And so he was just like, maybe think about what you really want to do with your life. And I mean, honestly, it was the best decision. I just thought I loved coding so much my senior year that it just meant to it just was something for me that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I enjoyed the software aspect of it, not so much like the hardware. And so when I was told that I could just do computer science and code just on my computer all day, don't have to work with hardware, it made sense. And I'm also very goal oriented, and so I just wanted to make sure that I knew what I wanted to do with my degree. And so, um, seeing that I was so passionate about gaming, it just made sense for me to try to get into a gaming environment in the gaming industry. And so, coding really, in my last year of high school, became really prevalent in my life, and it is now what I'm going to do for a living. And so I love it so much, and I don't think I could ever pick a different career.
Okay, that's good. That's always good to hear when somebody's passionate about what they do. So you mentioned that you prefer the software side, the coding side, compared to the hardware side. What aspect of hardware didn't you enjoy whilst you were studying? Because obviously hardware is very varied, and you can do coding obviously on hardware as well, and that's very hardcore. But what hardware stuff did you do at university, and that made you think no, software is my career path?
I think we, at least in when I was doing hardware stuff, we were always told like be super careful because you might blow everything up, and that was just too much for me. I was just so scared to do anything, and for me, like to learn, I just had to like try and test things out, and like I felt very restricted in that sense that like I just couldn't test if this moved the right direction because I would mess it up or potentially break it, and then there goes a a lot of money. And so um, it was just more like I was scared to do it. And there was just too much pressure to make it work the first time. And for me, it was never like coding in general. Like it's never going to work the first time. You're going to have to take a lot of time to get it to work. And hardware seemed like one of those things where you had to just be perfect the first time. And I couldn't take that responsibility.
Yeah, hardware is definitely one of those things. And the thing is, once you ship hardware, yeah, you can release some updates to the hardware, but generally you don't get many updates. Obviously, if it's graphics cards, you do get updates, but generally speaking, you don't, like, the hardware's there then. So, so if there's problems, if there's backdoor entries, and exploits, they're there for the life cycle of that product.
Right.
Whereas you could release software, let's say Apex for example, could have some bug in it, and because obviously you need to be online to play it, and you need the latest version of the game to play it, you just patch it. So it's
Right.
not that big of a deal. But likewise, hardware, when it does release, it's generally a bit tighter than software because they know it needs to be tight.
Right.
So, so the benefits to, and the pros and cons to both aspects of it. And what perks does Respawn give to their employees? Because these are big companies; they're known for giving perks. What sort of perks do you get at Respawn?
Are you talking about like in-game perks or just like in general?
No, no, no. It perks actually working at Respawn.
Oh, okay. Um, I'm. I mean, we get a lot of perks in regards to just like, um, sorry, I'm like blinking. Are you talking about like the job perks, like the
Yes, job
insurance and
perks.
stuff? Okay,
Job
okay.
perks. Yes.
So at Respawn, we do get a lot of help when it comes to like insurance stuff like that, just like the general perks, and we also get a lot of they help us a lot with just like our PC setup. So they give us just like the topmost working computer and PC, and so we get a lot of help with just making sure our setup is equipped to do our work, and we get also just like we get just like I know one thing in particular that I'm still thinking about is that we get like a respawn day, and so they allow us to go if you're in the LA area. They basically ask you like, "Hey, come down to Universal Studios, and you can just have a fun time." And so, just like simple stuff like that, they're really a great company to provide a great atmosphere like that. Um, and I mean, if you're working in office, I feel like you do get a lot more perks. I mean, we have a gym there, so if anyone's available to hit the gym in between breaks, and we get a lot of support in general when it comes to being at respawn. And I mean, I don't know the full ins and outs of it since I'm not there yet, but just they gave all those perks to the interns, and so they really do treat their employees well.
Okay, that's good. I'm guessing you get stuff like if you're actually in offices, you get stuff like free food, free snack.
Right.
They have it there as well.
Yeah, they have snack stations and like a full kitchen if you did want to get some food in at their facility. They also have just like a gaming like station, so like you can game, play some pool, and so very very fun environment to be in.
Okay, that's good. And that respawn day, how often is that? Is that once a year?
Yeah, it's once a year. I think it's like in the middle of the summer, and so basically the last respawn day they had it at Universal, and I think after like I think it was like 6 p.m. They rented the whole lower lot to respawn employees, which seemed very cool because it just seemed like a little respawn party, and so I'm really excited to be able to do that. Hopefully,
Okay. And all this talk, because I've kind of got a hint at it already, segues into a question I was going to ask later. Are you remote?
currently I am, just because I'm still in school, and so the transition out of school right into respawn was a little bit too much at the current time. And so I am remote for now, but I am planning on moving in office in a couple months, like after I start, just because I want to make sure I find the right spot to be in and comfortable with where I'm living, considering this might have to be a home for a while. And so I don't want to rush things when it comes to that. And so I am going to be remote for now, but planning on moving in office very soon after I start.
Okay. And how are they with remote? Because some companies are, they want you in the office, and some companies are, we don't mind, you're remote, you get the work done, we don't really care. And especially with COVID now, obviously toning down a bit, a lot of companies have been saying to their employees, remote time's over, get back into office. How lenient is Respawn with doing remote work?
I would say Respawn is very lenient when it comes to that sort of thing. A lot of our employees, I mean, they're all over the US and Canada, and they have like their families. And so um, making, I guess, our employees go in office seems a little bit too much for those people who are settled down, have their families, and have their children going to school. And so I know my team specifically, we're all over the U.S. and Canada, and I think there's like maybe one person who's actually in office, and so um, it works. Like we get things done, and we didn't see a drastic change in our progress as a team, and so Respawn specifically don't ask for you to come in office. I know in recent times they've been asking the Star Wars team to come in office, and so I know in their Chatsworth studio, I think a lot of their Star Wars team is there, and for Apex, there's about like 15 people there. But mostly the people who are in office just got out of college or don't have any ties into a specific place. So Respawn don't necessarily tell you to come in office. You're always welcome to, and they understand that we have lives outside of our work, and so they allow us to work remote, and they're totally fine with that.
Okay, that's good. And because obviously you only started recently, but have you spoken to anyone that was there pre-COVID? And do you know if the sort of emphasis or the sort of relaxation with remote working was that pre-COVID, or was that because of COVID and they've just sort of kept it around?
I think it was honestly a pre-COVID thing because the team I was working on during my internship, they've been at or not Respawn, but just like EA in general for like 10 years, and so and they haven't been like in office or anything or like made drastic changes, and so I think at least in my understanding, it's kind of always been a thing to be able to work remote, and it just kind of solidified our, you know, we had to solidify that when COVID happened. And since we've had that experience before, I don't think we struggled to make that transition. Maybe the people who were in office did have to work a little bit to make that transition, but I mean, a lot of our work is online, and so if we have to work remotely on our computers, we didn't see that much of an issue. And I know, I mean, now it seems to be fine, and I think we're okay with that remote work because we've had experience before.
Okay. And so, what's it like working at Respawn? Talk us through a day there, and the overall vibe.
Yeah, so I mean, I only have my internship experience, but I think it will translate over. But basically, the first half of our day is kind of filled with meetings, and so um, sometimes we have all respawn employee meetings where we kind of go through all the games and see what each team has been working on, and then we kind of go into our separate teams and do stand ups and just update each other on what we've worked on, what the blockers are in place, and what we plan on doing for the day. And then we just kind of have our own time to just do our work and get our tasks done. And then sometimes in the afternoon, at least in my internship, we had just like, for example, for my internship, we had just Apex Mobile team members go into a meeting and just talk about our game specifically. And so it's just filled with meetings and coding sessions and stand ups. So not too different from like team to team. I think my other team will also be doing the same thing, and I mean, there's also like play testing days, but for the most part, it's just filled with meetings and coding sessions.
Okay. And what sort of tools and software does Respawn use to conduct all these meetings and coordinate stuff? Because you mentioned Slack, and like, do you use Teams or is it just Slack? Like, what other stuff do you use?
Yeah, so Slack is a really big one. I will say, uh, I think that's our primary source of communication. We don't use Teams. We just use like Zoom and just have an invitation go into our email. One thing I will say is for like task updating and just like I guess our task sheet is on Jira. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but
Yes, I've
we
used it
use
before.
yeah, so we use basically like a version of Jira to keep the team up to date and to record our task, and uh, that's also a really big thing when it comes to just our personal meetings and doing our personal stand ups. Is keeping that Jira board up to date. It helps the team immensely when we get to see what each person is doing and making sure we're not overloading anyone. So I would say Jira and Slack we use a lot to just be up to date, and then just use our general email for like big meetings or anything like that.
Okay. Yeah, talking about Jira and other software like that. I know you mentioned it earlier. I can't remember what you were talking about exactly, but you were saying that it's something that you didn't learn at university. I think there's a lot of stuff that you just don't learn when you're at university, but it's just so prevalent in the industry. They don't properly really cover, code repositories, Git or GitHub, GitLab, that sort of stuff. They briefly have it, but not that much. They don't really talk about, messaging platforms like Teams and Slack. Like, you might think, oh, what's there to mention? But it's still extra thing you need to learn. And if you already know it, if they teach, if they actually communicate to you, let's say on Slack, you end up learning it at college, and then you can put in a CV that you already have experience in it. Jira as well, because when you go and use Jira, you look at it, it's pretty intimidating because it's not
Right.
the simplest interface. There's a lot going on there, and I feel like that sort of stuff really does need to be taught at colleges and universities. What's your opinion on that?
I 100% agree. I mean, going into my internship and I saw Jira, and like you said, it's very intimidating. I looked at it and I was just like, what is this, like a new coding software? Like, what's going on? And so it's at least specifically Jira. I do feel like that is very universal across companies. And
It
so,
is, yes.
yeah, I would want that to be taught. I know they teach the software engineering students, not so much the computer science students, which I find it to be interesting because they do overlap a lot. I'm currently
Oh
in a
yeah.
software engineering like capstone project, and so it's only made for software engineers. But as a computer science major, I am able to take it, and they're learning using like Jira and Slack, and this computer science students don't get that experience, and I find that to be I mean, it puts us in a disadvantage for sure, just because it's so prevalently used. And like GitHub and stuff like that is also such a big thing. And we just have to learn that ourselves. And if they can integrate that with our learning, I think it would just be a lot easier for us to make that transition into the real world since it's used so much.
Oh yeah, especially when you're using something like Git and you get problems with it. Files are locked, or you don't have permission, or you got some SSH key, issues.
Right.
Whatever it is, you're gonna come, have so many problems. And if they, not all of them, but if they cover just some of the core problems, then they talk you through how generally Git works, and because you have multiple, many years, like 3-4 years at university, we had to briefly cover this. And if they just integrate it within the actual course, it doesn't need a whole module on Jira. You just If they just say you just have to use Jira for tracking your progress on your project, for example, especially team projects, you'll just end up learning it. And if they say, because they at universities they use stuff like Office 365 or the Google Suite
Right.
a lot, and they don't teach you that. You just end up picking up the few nuances around Office 365 or the Google suite for business or for education just because you use it. And I feel like if they said, okay, we're going to communicate via Slack, and we're going to, or maybe even Discord, because Discord is used as well, but like we're going to communicate via Slack, We're going to have, calls on there. We're going to maybe even, lecturers could assign tasks via
Mhm.
Jira or something like that, and have some sort of Scrum system going. And you have to use that. You just inevitably learn it by yourself. But because you don't, integrate that, or they don't integrate that into the actual workflow at university, students come out and they're just like, what the hell is this? And so many other tools. I feel like another tool that is not used at universities that much or at all is stuff like Make and CMake. Whereas when you
Right.
get into the real world, you're going to be using those tools or something along those lines.
Yeah, I totally agree with the C make or make. What they tend to do at the university is just like give you like a step by step thing of what to do, but they don't explain like what it's for. They just like it's just for it to run. Like you just got to do it.
Or they just give you a project like a template and be like, open it and it works, and maybe link a few libraries. And you
Right.
finish
Yeah.
university and you think, okay, that's all I gotta do. But they don't show you all of that other, making the project, or if it's a web project, using Node, yeah, and package managers to, set all that stuff up. Then having issues if you don't have permission, you need to use, super user rights, all that stuff. You just don't see any of that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it is frustrating because I feel like my transition into my internship would have been a lot smoother if I did have those resources, and they're just so widely used that it just makes sense to integrate that with our learning. Not sure what's stopping them. Not sure if maybe our professors just don't have that experience in the industry to know that's so important. I'm not really sure.
I mean, one of the big things is because I've been at university, but I've also taught at university for a year as well, not long after I finished. And so I've got a sort of inside scoop of how things are done. It's not very standardized. Whereas, when you're at school, you have, I'm guessing same with America, you have exam boards and, they prepare the exam papers, they prepare the coursework, and, that gets marked all externally. Whereas with universities, it's very much the universities creating their own papers, the lecturers are creating their own material, and if they don't need to update it, it's less work for them, so they just don't bother updating it. And
Mhm.
the problem is that's fine for a subject like maths. You can go many years and still have relevant, resources, relevant presentations if you're doing a maths degree. But that's not the case in computer science.
Right, it's so dynamic.
You can go from not having Slack and Discord, in the industry, and then 5 years later to Slack being the de facto tool being used. Whereas, like I said, in something like maths or even science, that's it's generally not the case. Most of the time, you're learning old, theories that have been established hundreds or sometimes even thousands of years ago. So it's not as required to have the latest up to date things taught. But in some sort of computer science degree, yeah, you definitely need to keep up with the times. But unfortunately, the lecturers don't, and there's no accountability, and they just stick with the basics. Also, I understand that it's going to take time away from something. So as a
Right.
result, where are you taking that time away? I definitely know when I was at university, there was stuff that we learned, and I felt like probably was just a waste of time. And now knowing what I know now, it would have been much better if they taught us Slack wasn't around then, or something similar, or Skype for Business, or Jira, or something along those lines. That would have been far better than saying, okay, we've got 4 modules and we're going to make every module coding, but a different language and a different sort of industry entirely.
Right.
I feel like if they focused there more, it would have been would have been a lot better.
Right. I completely agree with that. And I think it just shows that the computer science and software engineering world is just so dynamic that you just have to like respond to change, and
Mm-hmm.
you just can't sit with the same stuff every year. It just gets outdated. I mean, even now, like things that I learned like maybe like 3 years ago, like I don't really see now. And so you just have to keep changing and updating just information in general. And so I think our our professors definitely need to keep us prepared for the next year, the next change.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think even if they don't teach it, they should at the very least say, "Here's a curated list of resources. Check these out because these are teaching you certain tools, applications, coding procedures that are either coming up or already in the industry." And if they admit that we just don't have the time to do it because we got so much of the stuff, but you need to learn this. Here's the resources. You just go through these 2 hours of videos. You're golden because
Right.
the thing with Slack, it's not that complex to learn for the vast majority of interaction you have with it. Yes, you can get very complicated with it, but most of the time you don't. It doesn't need to be. But it, the thing is, it's not just Slack. Like say, it's Jira, it's this, it's that. And when you start your first job or just any job, you have all these tools, and they just bombard you. And the company's not really, sitting there, asking, "Oh, you don't know Slack, let me give you a bit of time to learn Slack. Oh, you don't know Jira, let me give you a bit of time to learn Jira. Oh, you don't know how to using the terminal commit stuff to Git, let me give you a bit of time to do that." Whereas if you have some resources that literally only spend 2-3 hours per each one, you can do it over a summer or over a few weekends, and then you'll be clued up.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, like, for sure when I joined Respawn and I told them I don't know what Jira is, it's not like they waited for me to learn it. I had to pick it up, and so definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's one of those ones where they're not really that fussed that you don't know, but they're not, like they're going to wait for you to learn it. And I feel like even companies could do a bit more, again, if they don't stop all things, but if they say, okay, here's some resources. If you at any time are stuck, just go check these out. We've curated them. They're really good. You go through these. We'll guarantee you that you'll be, all good up to scratch. Just a couple of hours on videos on Slack. Probably don't even need that. Probably half an hour worth of videos on Slack. But
Yeah.
yeah, they don't even have that. But moving on, how big are the teams at Respawn? Because I know some companies, the teams are huge, and some, like at Amazon, they have the two pizza teams where they're just like about 8 or so people. Well, what's the team structure like at Respawn?
For Apex Mobile, teams are pretty small. I mean, the team I worked for, it was a team of two coders, one technical manager, and then our product manager. So, I mean, a team of four is pretty small when it comes to a game like Apex Mobile. And my team that I'm going to be joining, I know they're looking to expand, but at the current time when I was interviewing with them, I think there were around eight, which again is pretty small for a game like Apex Legends. And so Respawn in general, I think, has pretty small teams, or at least not as big as like other companies have. And so I would say right now they are looking to expand those teams because there's just so many projects that we have, and so my team I think is looking to expand more to like 12 to 15 people. There's just a lot of tasks, like I said, that need to be distributed, and we don't want to burn out our employees. And so, at least for the build and release team, we're a pretty small team, and I think other teams are also on the smaller side, but we are looking to expand.
Okay, so you said on that team there was two coders, a technical manager, and a project manager. So what was I can imagine the role of the coders, but what was the roles of the technical and the project manager? Because they basically are 50% manager management and 50% dev. So what was their purpose within the team, and did they interact with other teams? Like what was their roles?
Right. So our product manager was basically like was the communicator with other teams, and so if we had an issue with something, we would tell her, and she would then, find the people that need to be contacted. And she also was a big part in our task management, making sure that Jira was up to date. She was the one that would calculate, our burn down charts and stuff like that, and make sure that we aren't going overboard and overloading our coders. And our technical manager was more she like provided assistance on the technical side. So if we had to like brainstorm or something, we would go to her and ask her, her ideas, and she would also be the main source of our technical task distribution. So she would make sure that we also didn't get overloaded or burned out, since she had more of that technical um, aspect. Because one thing is our product manager didn't code or anything like that, and so we did need some sort of technical lead that understood how long things would take, and the stress of coding in such a high pressure environment. So I would say the product and technical manager kind of coincided and did a lot of overlapping work. It was just they were just big supports for the coders.
Okay, and you was talking about the technical manager. Did that technical manager, you know, get deep into the code themselves or not? Did
Not
they do much?
really.
No. Okay.
Yeah, they were mostly like involved with meetings, making sure that our team was like staying on top of what the rest of the teams expected out of us. But she wasn't really coding heavy at all.
Okay. And how much of the tech is proprietary? The game tech, and then also do they use? I know they use Slack, they use Jira, but do they use any tech for the management, for the communication side that they made themselves? I know some companies they end up making their own tech. I know Amazon's really big, but had somebody on from Amazon on the other week, and he was saying Amazon they don't have like GitLab or anything like that or GitHub. They have their own version. I think they have their own version of like Jira as well, like that they made themselves. Are there any tools like that Respawn's made that's proprietary?
Yeah, so Respawn themselves also made like their own version of Jira, but I think it's very similar to Jira. That's why I just call it Jira. And so they have that resource. They also have their own resources when it comes to like analytics that like we're only allowed to see. And so it's basically a page that's connected to our sales and stuff like that. And we also have our own like documentation page that again Respawn employees are only allowed to see. Um, but nothing like we didn't really necessarily like make anything like brand new or anything like that. It was just more like security stuff that we had to account for. And so yeah, I would say those are the main resources that we ended up like making for ourselves.
Okay, just a little thing. Have you moved a little away from the mic because it was a little quieter than you was for the rest of the podcast?
Oh yeah, sorry, I did.
Yeah, it happens. Okay. So, like I was saying earlier, Respawn was created by Jason West and Vince Zampella, who, co-founded Infinity Ward, which created, Call of Duty. Is COD and Infinity Ward mentioned a lot at Respawn, especially considering the guys, left not on the best of terms. And I feel like their games like Titanfall and Apex have a very Call of Duty like feel to them.
Honestly, in my time there, I don't remember any account of like saying anything in regards to those games. Um, Maybe it's just like the culture. I'm not really sure. Um, but not not that I can remember now that you bring it up that we ever brought up like Call of Duty or anything like that. It was more
Okay.
like let's just focus on our own games, and so it was always the talk about our games.
Okay. So, from what you've experienced at Respawn so far, what advice would you give to somebody that wants to start their own game studio? Like, what sort of little tips and tricks and little nuggets would you give to somebody to accelerate their journey?
I mean, firstly, I would say practice self-discipline. It's such like a big thing when it comes to like um getting, progress done. You're gonna have to make sacrifices that you might not want to do at the current moment, but if it's for the future, to better your future, you might need to do that. And just knowing the balance between what you want and like what you have, and understanding the resources available to you is really important. So I would say practice self discipline. I mean that goes across like anything. It doesn't really have to mean making your own gaming studio. Um, I would also say it's like a big mental thing. Just like believing in yourself and knowing your worth is such a strong aspect to life. Just knowing that you can do it is, even if it's just as simple as that, and not giving up as easily. I mean, it's not going to come easy, that's for sure. You're going to have to make decisions that are really hard. And so just giving yourself that time and knowing your worth is very important. And also just surround yourself with people who also like believe in you and are like-minded and believe in the dream. It's one thing that I mean, you might have people who are just like good at coding, but they just do it because they see the money aspect. They're just doing it because they're getting told to. But if you surround yourself with people who want to do it, who like to do it, and want to see the success, it just feels a lot better in the long run. And just the team dynamic is a lot more, I guess, healthy. Um, I mean, it's hard to say what you have to do, but um, it's all. I would say a lot of it is a mental thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of a life is mental. Being in the right headspace, being controlled, but being able to see the goal, break stuff down. For sure. What
Right.
aspect of a game would you love to work on?
I mean, when I first started studying computer science, the end goal was always to do like gameplay stuff. And so I really just wanted to be part of just like the gameplay and the movement, especially. I thought that was like super interesting. But the more I studied computer science, I feel like the more I just like wanted to be in the background. So at first it was like, oh, I just want to be in the forefront, like put me in gameplay. And then next it was like, oh, actually, maybe put me on like, server stuff, or more like background, like data management. And now I'm like completely in like the support role where you don't really see what I do in the build and release team. So like I for sure changed what I wanted to do, and so I see myself now in more of a support role and more on like the background side. But I think in the future I would want to do something more gameplay related, um, and just I think um, seeing like the project like come to life in that sense is very rewarding to me, and I do want to have that feeling.
Okay. And which games and game developers do you admire the most?
Um, I mean, there's a lot of games that I would say uh, shaped who I became. I mean, Pokemon, firstly, was such a big game in my life. Growing up, that was like what I played all the time, even like Nintendo 64, like Pokemon Stadium, um, just like the general Pokemon like Red and stuff like that. So I do see the Pokemon developers as like a big inspiration to me. And I mean, even now, like they've consistently brought new uh, like storylines and just new games like every year, which I admire a lot, because I mean, developing a completely new game every year is hard, and I see that. And um, I mean, what they bring out is just so dynamic in the sense that, I mean, they have to make new Pokemon, they have to make a new story, and then the mechanics and all that. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. So I would say Pokemon um, is a big, big, it just like inspiration to me. And I mean, what now that I think about it, like maybe if I didn't get a position at Respawn, I would probably want to join that team.
Okay. And have you ever thought of going indie, as it's a very popular choice, these days?
Yes, but I'm not sure. It's really like it's hard to be I guess like Respawn was like a safe option. Like I knew I was going to be okay in the long run. Um Going indie, I felt like I was taking a risk, and in the current moment, I don't think I can take a risk like currently. Just like I'm going right out of college, I do want something more stable. And Respawn did provide that. Maybe in the future I would go indie, but right now I think I do want to stick with Respawn and keep that my home.
Okay. If you ever did go indie, what sort of games and titles would you like to work on?
Um, Not really sure. I would definitely want more of a laid back kind of chill game. So something more like storyline progression kind of game. Nothing like too intense, like battle royale or anything like that.
Do
More
you have
like
any examples of exam games? Because I get people, I ask the question, they're like, I love Zelda, I want to do something like Zelda. Like, do you have any, examples of games that you would like to try and create your game
um,
after?
I mean something like Pokemon, but like not like Pokemon. It's hard to describe. I like the story aspect of Pokemon. I would say I really, really want to focus on um, like storyline progression and that sort of thing. But also have more like I want it to be mechanical. So I don't know. I would say Pokemon right now, but I would probably have some sort of hybrid.
Okay. Because you talk about Pokemon a lot. I'm guessing you're a fan of the cartoons and of the cards?
Um, when I was younger, I was a big fan of the cartoon. Not so much now. I kind of see clips here and there. Cards, oh yes, for sure. I actually like bought cards yesterday, so that's a big part of my life.
Okay. Did you get like a booster pack or did you get one of the big packs?
Um, Yesterday I got the booster packs, but I always get one of those the big packs. It's just so I just have so much adrenaline when it comes to it. And so yeah, Pokemon cards for sure are fun. I usually stick with the big packs.
Okay. And like, what are some of the rarest ones you've got, or some of the ones that you really like?
Um, any like Venusaur card I like love. I mean Bulbasaur was like my starter growing up, and so any Venusaur card I get super excited. So I have a lot of Venusaur cards. I know my brother's also a big Pokemon card collector. He has more of like the original ones. So he has a lot of like the gym leader Pokemon ones, which I find really cool. So he sticks more with the vintage. I stick more with like the new ones. So it's a good balance. But any Venusaur card is just my favorite.
Okay. Yeah, because I haven't bought any Pokemon cards in years, but I've got a bunch of original ones. Actually, all of mine are from the first few original batches back in the day in the 90s, and I've got original Charizard.
Oh, that's
I've got one of
awesome.
them. The condition's not good enough to get a lot of money. I checked.
Oh
the
no,
Yeah,
it's still good.
I remember when they all started going for a lot of money. I remember thinking, I've got one of them. I'm sure I have. I remember I pulled the out. I was like, oh, it's the exact one. And then I looked because obviously it has to be highly graded, like a 9 or 9.5. When I looked at the condition, it was probably fetching 100 or so quid. Mm,
Oh,
yeah, not much, but it is the one that goes for over $1 million if it's mint.
oh, that I mean, it's still to have that card. I think would be nice.
Oh yeah,
I,
and that's the reason I've never decided to sell it because I was like, 100 quid ain't gonna change my life. There's no point. I'd rather have an original Charizard, and there's a story behind getting that as well. Because my best friend at the time, we was in year three, must have been about 8, 7, 8 years old. and he had a Charizard. His parents used to buy him a lot of Pokemon, and I remember I really wanted one, and he had just lost his. My parents bought me a booster pack. I remember him saying, "Oh, you're gonna get Charizard?" I was like, "I'm not gonna get Charizard. Like, it's so unlikely." I opened the booster pack. His second or third one in because all the generic one, the one that you have like 100 of,
Right. Yeah,
the
yeah,
boosters,
yeah.
I didn't care about them. I see Charizard, I'm like, oh my god, I've actually got Charizard. He was excited. I was super excited. And I remember a little while after that, I was at his house playing, and because he had recently lost his dad said to me, "I'll buy the Charizard off you." And he put down £100 on the table, which at the time must be worth about $200, like five £20 notes. And for a kid, that's a lot of money. And
Uh-huh.
I don't think I've said no that fast to anything in my life. I was like, no, I'm not giving this up
Prized
at all.
possession.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm definitely never giving that up unless somehow he gets valued at like six, seven figures. It's staying.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I always look at prices just to see, but I would never give up a card.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of other old shinies as well. I'd say, I mean, it's possible that I have other rare ones that are worth more just because of the condition. Because the funny thing is, all of my other Pokemon cards are in very good condition, and I generally keep my stuff in very good condition. The Charizard was exceptional because my friend had one. He lost his. I remember being super excited about it, and I kept taking it out of the packet to play with it and look at it. And
Right.
as a
Yeah.
result, it deteriorated and got creased up more than any other card. So the rest of the card collection is in better condition, and I bet there's other ones that are worth more just because they're in better condition and they're like semi valuable.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's probably worth looking into them.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely. I mean, the folders at my parents. I haven't looked at it for a while, but I definitely do want to, grab that, grab my Digimon collection, my Yu-Gi-Oh collection as well. And I
Right.
mean, I wouldn't mind. I have thought about now and again getting back into collecting Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Pokemon, I thought, I, I come and go with wanting to go back to Pokemon. I always say I'd rather go for. I prefer the look of the original ones. So I
Right.
would want, even if I don't get like an amazing condition one, so it doesn't cost that much on eBay, I still rather have one of those original ones, especially like a shiny I didn't have. The thing with Pokemon is I collected a lot back in the day. Yu-Gi-Oh, I didn't collect a huge amount, so there's a fair few main ones that are missing. So that's another reason I would want to go back to Yu-Gi-Oh. Do you have one of those or those folders where you have the sleeves to put the cards in?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have like my one that I'm doing like for my current cards, but I always had one growing up, and so I like to keep my cards in like great condition, but it was always hard. Like you said, I would always take it out, like admire it, or like take it with me to school just to show it off.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, well, when I had that Charizard and I took it to school, everyone it was like I had the some sort of holy scripture. Like I was just holding it, and everyone was like, "Ooh, you
Right.
got
Yeah.
Charizard." Every other shiny just paled in comparison to having
Right.
like that card at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it was you kind of bring up like a core memory. Like it was also like a big thing in my school to have like these Pokemon cards, and you would have these kids that didn't necessarily know the value of Pokemon cards. And I mean, not to like call myself out, but I would definitely scam people into like trading a Weedle for like their like really nice card.
I did the
Um,
same.
so like yeah, like I would honestly use my Pokemon knowledge power in my favor to get those nice cards.
Oh yeah, I remember. Oh, can't remember which card it was. I'm pretty sure it was Pokemon. He had like this rare shiny one. Again, not Charizard rare, but it was pretty rare. And I was like, really wanted it. And I was like, oh, I gave him like two shinies that you because he got some shinies that weren't that rare. But I gave him like two shinies, and I gave him a bunch of other smaller ones. And he thought he got such a good deal because he got like almost like 10 cards.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I got this rare shiny one, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, no, I was the same way and I was just like, "Oh, they just don't know." But I mean, the game's the game.
Yeah, it is. So going back, what companies did your fellow classmates go and work for? Because you're still at university. I'm guessing other students or your other friends there did placements or are going to go and work. What other companies have they got roles at?
Um, I mean, right off the bat, I am remembering one classmate that did end up at Tesla, which I found crazy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't necessarily have friends just in computer science. I had like mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. So I will say Tesla was one of those for my mechanical engineering friend. I know someone who went to Twitter, which was also really cool to see. Um, but a lot of my friends ended up just kind of staying locally and not really doing anything big. um, I mean, I do. There are some friends that did end up like at Apple or Google, which is cool. But I would say the majority did stay local. I think they were just trying to secure something that was safe. And if they had that contract available at their hands, they just kind of signed it without looking into other options, which is totally fine. But I would say most of them stayed more local or didn't really go into those big companies.
Okay, fair enough. And what would you recommend to people looking to get a job in the industry, especially as a developer in a AAA studio, to focus on in terms of their portfolio and making them more employable?
I mean, I always say GitHub, like keeping a GitHub and just kind of documenting your progress through there is super important. I mean, GitHub is kind of like a different part of your resume, like that they could see. And so I always tell people keep that up to date with like personal projects, school projects. It doesn't really matter as long as you have documentation of your code. It's really helpful. I also say LinkedIn is such like a big thing nowadays. It that honestly is an extension to your resume. So like whatever you don't fit on your resume, just put that on your LinkedIn and they can see that. And it's just a lot more accessible and that can be sent a lot more easily around the company. So to be up to date on GitHub and LinkedIn is honestly the two best things I could tell you. I can't like think or like I can't count how many times people have reached out through LinkedIn, saying like, "Hey, like I think you would be a good fit for like this role. Like, would you consider, applying?" So I got a lot of opportunities through LinkedIn, and so um, like I mentioned, just keep that up to date and update your GitHub as much as you can to show your progress as a coder.
Okay. And I've got a few fun generic questions that I'd like to, ask people. Would you rather run a 10-person company or a 1,000-person company, and why?
Um, I would probably say a 10-person company just because I like that small like environment and just like I feel like you just have a lot better connection with the people with you. I that's like the whole reason why I went to a smaller like class size school was because I wanted to make connections with people and feel like I could connect more on a personal level rather than like we're just classmates or we're just workers. So I would probably pick the smaller company size.
Okay. And 5 million upfront or 500,000 a year for the rest of your life, and why?
I'd probably say 500,000 a year for life. I'm pretty good with my money, so I don't think I would necessarily like blow it all away. I'm definitely a saver, and so I think in the long run it would help. And it's not like I need a lot of money to live a comfortable life, so I'm okay with sticking it for the long run.
Okay. Favorite board game?
Ooh, that one's hard. I mean, Monopoly is such like an integrated part of my childhood just because of the different versions. I remember having like three different Pokemon versions. Um, So I would probably say Monopoly. It's just such a big. It was such a fun memory that I have.
Yeah, for me the same as well. Now we've got since I got married, we've got a whole heap of board games, and probably half of them are just different variations of Monopoly.
Yeah,
And we were planning on getting more as well. But yeah, Monopoly for sure. Favorite video game?
Um, all time is definitely Pokemon. Such a
Which
big part.
one?
Um, that's hard. I would say probably like the original like Pearl. I just remember like playing that with my brother and just thinking like this is so cool. So I would say Pokemon Pearl, and then currently it's probably Rocket League. It's such a chill game that I could just play music to and de-stress. So those two games.
Okay. Video game that you're looking forward to the most?
Um, Definitely the new Star Wars games. Like I said, like I kind of saw glimpses of it, and it just looks so cool. And so I'm ready to see the whole project in one and just play it through. I heard it's also a very emotional, like it's an emotional story, and so I'm such a sucker for that. So I'm
Oh,
excited.
okay. Because I remember you say they did demos and you saw it. Did you get to play it as well, or is it just hear the demo but you can't play it?
Um, I didn't play it necessarily. I just saw kind of like video demos. But I don't know if that will change in the future, but I know they have people play it. I'm not sure if it's just exclusive to the Star Wars developers or if other teams can, but I will definitely look into it because it looks like a good game.
Oh yeah, for sure. Have you played Fallen Order?
I haven't. I just watched like people play it. I haven't personally played it. But when that came out, I was like super excited, and I honestly probably should play it just for the fun of it, and just to get myself ready for the new game. But I haven't personally played it.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely worth a go. And love this question. It's always great to hear how people answer it. Does money buy you happiness, and why?
I personally don't think it buys happiness. I think it could enhance it, like you can get good memories from it, but I wouldn't say I'm very money driven. I'm happy with where I'm at. All I really need is like family and good friends, and so money is never really uh, what brings me happiness. It's more the people I'm with.
Okay, that's a good answer. And last two questions. What's your biggest regret as a developer that you would either tell your younger self or somebody else that's earlier in the journey?
I would say the biggest regret I have is just not believing in myself. I mean, I am a female, developer. I did, attend classes full of male individuals, and I felt like I didn't belong, like I said. But I would also say, like, I'm also Hispanic, so I was like a minority within the minority, and so I just like thought to myself like this isn't meant to be, like I'm not supposed to be here, and so I just didn't believe in myself as much, and I didn't give myself credit. And even now, I feel like I'm just lucky to be here. I have major imposter syndrome. So just like believing in myself and knowing my worth early on, I think would have helped my mindset now and just given me more confidence.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I feel like women that are within this sort of industry, the gaming and especially tech and coding industry, I think it's very common for them to feel that way because everyone around them isn't female, is male, usually older, and they're a bit more dominant. Yeah, I think it's very natural for females to feel that way when they're in this industry.
Right, for sure. And I would also say like people just like would say like, "Oh, it's really hard. It's like it's super difficult." And so I would just be like, "Oh, like I don't think I'm able to do that then? Like if it's super difficult, like who am I to say that I can do it? So just like also not listening to, I guess, like the negative things, and just like keep a good support system.
Oh yeah, people can be very negative. They, especially, I mean, yeah, people that are within the industry that are doing it that can be negative, but people that are outside of it that don't have any interaction with it, they can definitely be, you know, a, a bad stain on things because they, like I said, they can say, oh, it's very hard. Are you sure you can do this? All those things. I've heard all them as well, and it's like you've never tried to do it, so you can't
Right.
really fully know. And truth, let me have a go. If I fail, I fail. It's no skin off your nose. But yeah,
Right.
people so many times just want to put their nose in things. That's not their business. What I always say is just look at their life. If their life's gone the way that you want it to, fair enough. Listen to them. Most of the time, people giving you advice like that, their life is not the life that you would trade for.
Right.
Take their advice with a pinch of salt. Then.
Right. I remember like specifically someone telling me, "Oh, getting into the gaming industry is like super hard. Like you
Mm.
should probably reconsider." But I was just so passionate about it that I was just like, "I'm not going to give up on my dream." And I remember when I got my internship, she was one of the first people I told because it was more like, "Hey, I did it." And then when I got my full time, she was also one of the first people I told because I was just like, yeah, like you doubted me, but I was just so determined that I ended up doing it. And honestly, it gives me like fuel to keep going, but it's definitely like there's some things that I'm just like, oh, that one hurt a little bit.
Yeah, of course, of course. And how did they interact, or how did they react? Sorry, to both times. When you gave the news.
Um, I mean, they were just like, "Oh, congrats, like that's awesome." I think they didn't really realize like that. I don't think they remembered that they told me that like it's not.
Yeah. Or they
Um,
would not want to admit it. They'll probably say, oh, I was just, just trying to be helpful, looking after your best interests.
right,
Yeah, I was just saying, no, you can go for it, but I was just saying, no, it's hard, just make sure you work hard. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that type of person, that very person, tries to twist it like, oh, you worked hard and you got it because I told you it was hard. Like, they'll twist
right.
it as if, they
To
pushed
give them
you.
credit, yeah. I mean, not sure what they were thinking, but it definitely felt good to just tell them that I did it.
Yeah. Was that a friend or a family member that said it?
It was a high school friend.
Friend.
So I actually hadn't talked to her in a while, and that was like the first time I talked to her. So she was probably like taken back by like, oh, this
Yeah, for
is
sure.
what you brought. But yeah, it was still a nice thing to say.
Okay. And did they themselves do much with their life up to that point? I'm hoping the answer is no, so it just makes it even more sweeter.
I mean, they're successful. I think
Okay. Oh, it would have been
they
so
they
good if you said no. They're just a lazy
yeah.
bum. They work in Mackies.
No. I think they were successful in the end. Not sure if they achieved their dreams as
Hmm.
what they wanted to do, but I mean, I think they're fine.
Okay, fair enough. And what advice would you just generally give other developer? Not biggest regret, just advice would you give other developer?
Um, I think honestly, just be a good team member. There's a lot of like teams that I think are just so disjointed, and it makes things a lot harder. One of the things I always tell people is for my internship every single day, I would wake up excited and happy to be there. And it honestly was because the team was just so nice and so um, just we gelled so well that it made me happy to be there. And so being a good team member not only just like helps progress the project, but it makes other people feel happy to be there and wanted. And when you have a great team, like you're just unstoppable. So just being a good team member, and that can mean just like a lot of things. Keeping up to date to Jira. It can be like one simple thing you can do, just being a good team member, but also just being a good human and being kind to one another is also just really important.
Yeah, I think that's just good advice in general. Just obviously try hard, work hard, but also at the same time, be good to others around you, but also be good to yourself. 'Cause it's very easy to get caught up in the grind, working, promotions, all that stuff, and growing personally, but then not taking time to relax, enjoy, yeah, and just enjoy the simple things of life. Because obviously life's short, and yeah, definitely enjoying those areas as well.
Right, you're totally right. I also would say like treat mental health as like an actual priority. So many times I feel like we forget we're human and we just work, 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 and we burn out our minds and just emotionally feel very defeated or drained. So just taking care of yourself in general is also very important in the long run. It doesn't even have to be in the work environment. Just keeping care of yourself is a good thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean that's all the questions that I've got. I just want to thank you, Jennifer, for coming on. And for anyone that's listening, what I'll do is I'll get any socials that Jennifer and any other links, portfolio, GitHub, that sort of stuff that you want to share. I'll put that in the description so you guys can check that out. So yeah, I just want to thank you, Jennifer, for jumping on the podcast today. It's great having you on. Love to have you on again, possibly next year. When you've actually you started to respawn full time and you've been doing it for a while, so we can talk about how it differs from being an intern to being a full time employee, and the extra stuff that you've learned.